Welcome to the Clashing of Steel. And so today I am playing Falxmen ever since I last played them, which was very long time ago. I usually like to play Falxmen with Arminius, because the mobility can be ridiculous. Then again, no other barbarian commander is as capable to inflict such offense as Vercingetorix, while at the same time having some defense as well. Personally, I think that the Defiance has gotten too much unnecessary nerfs. With the Falxmen, Defiance can still be very good, because Falxmen work as a special armor-piercing unit. While with the Sword Shield Infantry, the Defiance can feel kinda weak. Then again, with the Horsemen, it is excellently strong, which is why it was nerfed in the first place. But okay, let's have some fun with the Falxmen. For my surprise, this watchtower was not swarmed by enemy forces, but instead of our own. There are still enemy forces in the vicinity. Some are at their base, some are behind it. And this isn't actually a good location. Slingers are something that love to wreck me. My biggest fear playing Falxmen is always the ranged units. Defended ranged units, that is. Because if they are undefended, I might actually catch up with them. But here, I have another interesting focus. I want to force myself to deal with these infantries, so that my horsemen could flank or harass opponents from the side. My focus isn't to die here, my focus is just to be capable of being an annoyance. To bind opponents' infantry. Although sadly, Vengeance just overrides Defiance and the armor-piercing effectiveness of the Falxmen, I still want to keep them engaged as long as they're dealing with all the other opponents, because infantry is something that often annoys horsemen the most. Perhaps I was actually a bit late with my retreat. My focus was to keep them engaged for a while and then retreat. The Vengeance just makes things so much more complicated. Actually, one of my other hopes was that the horsemen would rout all of these opponents really fast, but sadly they're dealing with Scipio and one of their sides is facing the rock. So I did all I could. Actually I did a bit more than I should have, and it is time for me to disengage. I already have lost a huge number of troops. Fortunately, the Scorched Earth kinda helped me to deal with these opponents. We have lost near equally. But then again, perhaps I should have disengaged earlier. I could have used this tactic of disengaging, they would have refocused, and I could have charged them straight in the back. Might have been a lot easier for me. But then again, my focus was to buy enough time for the horsemen to get to hammer these opponents behind there. This decision would have been even more vital if I would have had to deal with the spearmen. I would have definitely lost more to the spearmen, because spearmen can kill excellently light armored units. And they are just the best counter for the horsemen. But fortunately they were swordsmen, so I was still left alive to some extent. As I said, my biggest fear are the ranged units. Those are so hard to deal with, especially seeing that they can fire at me, and compared to most other units, the missile block is rather non-existent. Falxmen are something that is best used to counter heavy infantry. Although they can counter pretty much any type of infantry, because they have excellent armor-piercing damage and do a lot of damage in general, it isn't good to usually waste them in head-to-head battles, even if it is against heavy infantry. Because as much damage as they can inflict, they are still lightly armored. Their key focus should be flanking, although they can also be disruptors, considering how much mobility and offense they pack. In some cases I have also used the Falxmen as archer hunters. But that is usually with Arminius, because Arminius just takes the mobility of Falxmen to a whole new level. But then again, Arminius can make them also a lot more fragile. Although, yeah, they do get to pack a bit more punch because of it. This fight has gone rather horribly to the most other sides. We at this side were rather capable. we had a lot of horsemen who, surprisingly enough, managed to flip this thing in our favor. And my biggest focus now is to deal with the enemy handlers. I actually am afraid of the horsemen as well, because Falxmen take a lot of damage from enemy charges. Especially the horsemen. Even if it is from face to face and you try to countercharge, it might not pay off, considering how much damage they can just inflict. Folksmen are like a speciality unit. They are excellent at the key locations against certain units, but then again they are weak to certain of the simplest counters. So they are not good when they are just alone waiting to go head on into struggle match like Germanicus. But they can be good when they are the ones who are flanking opponents that the Germanicus has engaged. With Vercingetorix, I sadly still have to say that the bread and butter for me has, and probably always or most of the time, will be the Scorched Earth. As good as Defiance may be in certain situations, and as much defense as the Iron Will can offer you, the Scorched Earth probably can make the most difference in key locations where it can often be rather vital. Bottlenecks, stacked units, anything that is stationary and slow, like Armored Legionnaires or Phalanx. It doesn't always have to inflict damage, but it would be great if it forces opponents to either abandon or retreat. Or perhaps in some rare cases, do extreme offense where he gets even more hammered. Vercingetorix used to be one of my favorite commanders, at least when the Defiance was strong. I felt that the infantry was really remarkable. It wasn't as strong as Germanicus, but it could surprise and act in ridiculous situations. So this here is my last stand. We could not deal with the handlers. Our horsemen went after the ranged units, which I'm guessing they got a bit surprised by the pikemen. And pretty much the handlers are the main reason why the opponents get the advantage over us. We did have some archers, but I'm guessing they got hammered on the western side of the map. And they could have been really useful at this key location or against these key opponents more precisely. Oh, the war dogs are always nasty to deal with, even with many different infantry types. Sadly, the Falxmen may have good armor-piercing damage, but I don't think they're capable of taking down the war dogs. Maybe the handlers, but I don't think the dogs are in their capability range. Although the Defiance still buys me some time to deal with them, they are still remarkably strong and nasty. We did all we could on our side of the map. We actually went rather offensive. We managed to flip it incredibly well to work out for us. We managed to deal with the infantry, horsemen and archers. But sadly the west side got annihilated. Our archers didn't get to be useful, or perhaps they weren't defended. But as much as I did, or as much as me and my team members, they were mostly horsemen, did, we still managed to be remarkable on our side of the map, taking down opponents in locations where they could have actually defended themselves, but surprisingly enough, they acted like typical players who did not know what would be the best form of action. But okay, let's head over to the scoreboard. As it can be seen, I did quite well actually. I did remarkable amount of offense. I'm the 4th player in my team by the scoreboard. And, well, I worked with all of the horsemen who did better than me. I was the one engaging the opposing Germanicus, who was playing 2 swordsmen and 1 horseman, and did not end up doing so well. Although he inflicted some huge casualties to me, actually. We managed to take down pretty much all the ranged units in the end, but sadly our own ranged units, or our own range capability, was rather nil. We also had elephants who could have given us an advantage, but sad to say, they went mostly after the pikemen, and that is where they died, and that is how the pikemen got so much offense score. Opposing handlers did really well, but that is mostly thanks to the mistakes made on the western front. That is pretty much where everybody else was, except for the top 4 players in our team. We were all on the east side, taking care of business. And the west side, okay, there were some in the middle as well, but everything else pretty much crumbled. I guess it started when the elephants died. Opponents actually did really well, especially Scipio, who just didn't want to die. Also Boudica, who was the best in the opposing team. The reason Boudica is the best is probably because there were some spear and pikemen on that side of the map, and I'm guessing the war dogs got their bite on those. Actually, if you take a look on both of our teams, you'll see there is huge unbalance. We have 4 players with horsemen and 1 player with elephants. And we have, well, only 1 player with ranged units, and the last 4 players with pretty much infantry. While the opponents have a great mixture of pikes, spears, swords, a bit of horsemen, and of course a lot of ranged units. Although thanks to elephants I would say it is balanced, but the amount of horsemen is just ridiculous. Anyways, don't forget to subscribe, and thanks for watching.